Well, I can't say this. The Matrix is older now than I was when the Matrix came out.
Awesome. I think we're live. Welcome everyone to another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is Wednesday, September 22nd. We'll be following along in the agenda that was posted in the NPM RFC's issue number 461. And I'll just copy and paste for everybody that's on the call right now the meeting notes doc. Feel free to add yourselves as attendees, and I'll do my best to take notes as we go along here. Quick reminder, these calls and all RFC's comms, we ask folks to please abide by our code of conduct, which is linked in the meeting notes and on the NPM RFC's repo itself. Synopsis here is just please be kind. As other folks are talking, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. And yes, just ideally we can have some civil discourse and move things forward in this forum and on the RFC's repo itself. Diving right into any announcements that folks would like to share today. If not, we can jump into our fairly small agenda. The first of which is issue 445. This is essentially an announcement or sort of a notice issue from our team to the community about the impending breaking changes and cut of NPM 8. Just a quick reminder here of the intention is to essentially drop in support for Node 10 and also drop the programmatic usage of NPM. And so those two things are pretty much the key details of this change. Jordan, I see your hands up. Would you like to make a comment?
Yeah. I mean, it's taken a while because NPM is a complex beast, but it seems like almost all of the things that issue commenters are claiming keeps them from upgrading from 6 to 7 have been resolved, except for a couple things, which I could guess at, but don't have off the top of my head. I can help you find them later. Is it worth trying to address those before NPM 8 so that to ensure that, you know, as many people as possible can smoothly upgrade?
I see, Isaac, you have your hand up. Did you want a rebuttal?
Yeah, not a rebuttal. I think it's a great. I think it's a great point. I want to bolster that. I would just sort of limit that. I think yes, however, only insofar as it won't cause a breaking change for Node.
Sure.
Because the reason for or cause it to be delayed too far, because the motivation for cutting 8 now is just so we can like drop old Node versions, drop the programmatic API, and basically not have any obstacle to shipping that in Node. So if fixing those things will be a breaking change from Node's point of view or too disruptive from Node's point of view, then no. And if it's too much work and it's gonna kind of take us too long to do, then I would also push back on it. But otherwise, yeah, if there's any like low-hanging fruit kind of in that area, then, or if it's stuff that's it's only additive, then yeah, by all means.
Well, the categories seem to be authentication with Git dependencies or alternative registries, and linking workflows that are different in 7 versus 6. And then there's a bunch of people about the NPM update changes in NPM 7, but I'm pretty sure that can't be changed within 7. But maybe that's something worth considering for 8, is reverting to the 6 behavior.
It depends on what aspect of the 6 behavior we're talking about. If there were some things about the way that NPM 6 did, the way that NPM update worked in NPM 6, which were which people came to rely on, but had some really unfortunate impacts. So there was kind of there was a principled choice to go the way that we did in some ways. One of the things that people have objected to is the fact that update no longer saves back to package.json.
That's the one I was saying, yeah.
That's something that we can definitely tackle. We just haven't, because it hasn't been kind of the top priority issue. But there's no reason, there's no principled reason why we can't do that. The other thing though, like with the way that that it worked with depth, I've seen some people object that when they run an npm update, it updates everything rather than just updating things that are at the top level. It's not responsive to depth. So like if you do npm update foo, it updates every instance of foo no matter what. And that is actually really important for consistency. And like over time, using npm update in a way that was kind of shallow or depth limited in that way would end up with really bizarre package trees that were like couldn't be made efficient very easily. So I mean, now we've got a case where you run npm update and it's basically the same as a fresh like package lock free install.
Right. Yeah, so I guess the broader thing is more other than the specific about updating package JSON from npm update. I think it's just kind of probably worth a repass of the issues to see which issues have a bunch of people saying we fixed this by downgrading to npm 6 and whittle down those further, eliminating the ones where people didn't have to downgrade. And then whatever's left seems like it might be important. That's sort of the thought I have. So thank you.
Yep.
So I think also one kind of option here is that we do have a bit of a grace period in terms of Node 12 and 14 existing and still going to package npm 6 with those node releases. So there's still life left in those node releases, and there's still options available, I guess, for those users that might be having trouble with or currently aren't served by the current feature set of npm 7. So I feel like there's at least an option for those users today, and we continue to ship security patches to v6 so long as it's being cut with a maintained version of Node. Not a great, like, sorry to say, hey, stay on 6. We still want to obviously address those issues. I guess I'm just saying that there's a bit of a grace period maybe for us to continue to improve like the upgrade.
I think that's sort of true, but there's been enough or like bug fixes, like really valuable bug fixes in npm 7, not just bug fixes from the rewrite, but bug fixes versus 6. And people who can't upgrade to 7 are basically denied those. So I think it's rapidly going to get to and then that's separate from even new features like workspaces or overrides or whatever might be coming. So I just, it seems like 7 to 8 is going to be a pretty easy upgrade for anyone who's not still on Node 10, but 6 to 7's like, I don't know. It would be nice if that were also easy.
Anybody else have comments on this? I think we'll definitely take the action, Jordan, to revisit in the next couple of weeks the sets or trends of issues for v7 and specifically folks that notify us that it's preventing upgrading and usage of v7. We'll revisit here. And just, I guess, another comment on this, it does seem like we're going to wait probably another week or two to actually cut npm 8, which gives us a bit of time to address any of those issues, ideally before we cut that release. Any other comments from folks? If not, we can move on to the second item we had queued up here for today. This is an old issue that we had put an action against, but our team hasn't picked up yet, and I just wanted to provide some visibility on this. This is RC 434. This is essentially an RC that allows you or a feature that allows you to dictate what package lock version you'd like to be using in a config or I believe it's in npm, not package lock, but the npm RFC config, essentially called, is it? I think it's package lock version. Yeah. And so I just wanted to bring this back up because we had the action item to have someone review this and then potentially merge it in, since we thought it was had worth. So yeah, I'm not sure if anybody can actually take the action to review this in the next week or two, but I think it'd be good to land before, yeah, potentially before npm 8 even.
I think we should definitely not. I see that there's some talk about extending the package lock property to be either a Boolean or a string of v1, v2, v3. I think that's terrible. we should get away from having mixed type configs if at all possible. You know, we have a handful of trinaries where there's true or false or unset, and that's kind of not wonderful. We try to avoid that, but it is it does serve a purpose sometimes. But in cases where it's like a Boolean or a string, we should just have a package lock version field that says if you're writing a package lock, you write it of this version, and a separate config, which is should I or should I not use in respect to package lock.
So the separate config would be something like package lock strict or package lock like
package lock for
config. Yeah, okay.
So yeah, so we would be setting package lock version equals number instead of package lock equals v1.
Right. Okay. Can I give you the action to get that feedback and then potentially?
I will give that feedback and I will land this PR to this RFC today.
Awesome, thank you, Isaac.
It's really not, it's not a ton of work to implement either. We might even be able to just sneak it in sometime soon.
To review. Awesome. And the last item we had, I know Tony isn't on the call, but this is the RFC 422 npm Audit Assertions. I will share the link to this RFC. We've kept this on our radar, but we're very much aware that we need to create some sort of actionable next steps in terms of this RFC and whether or not we're going to review it as is and pull it in or make changes to this. Jordan, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it'd be great if we could summarize in a new comment or something the remaining questions or issues. So there's been a lot of discussion on this one, and it would be massively helpful. Basically, right now it's fine because right now there's no CVEs plaguing the ecosystem. But the instant somebody finds a theoretical problem in a widely transitively used dependency, where maintainers are going to get yet another onslaught of largely false positive complaints. So it would be really, really amazing to get something like this in. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a maintainer burnout for many maintainers is always on the horizon, and they do the bulk of the work in the ecosystem. And it would yeah, I don't think it can be understated how much damage is done in the absence of this feature and how much benefit would be thus caused by having it.
Yeah, I wonder, my only hesitation with putting a stamp on this RFC saying, yes, we're going to do this, is it's really kind of bigger than NPM, right? There's actually relatively little that the CLI can do in this particular case. This is something that really belongs at kind of the, from NPM's point of view, belongs in kind of the GitHub advisory system, right? And there is there's a specification in place or a specification in development on how how to represent these things. I think we discussed it previously. There was Vex or Wex, I think, basically like an exception assertions or attestations, developer attestations. So I agree. It as somebody who gets lots of prototype pollution, spurious things, or like, oh well, if you call it with these args, then you'll own yourself, kind of.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
So what I wanted to sort of add there is, ideally, this is something that should be built into CVEs themselves, right? That the entire computer ecosystem should use. But that has not happened, and that industry has incentives, in fact, not to do it, because they're incentivized like in all sorts of ways to have the broadest possible like security vulnerabilities. So similarly, like, yeah, the GitHub advisory system is probably a better place than just doing it in NPM. But I think that if we keep waiting for the best place to do it, it'll never happen. And that's what's been happening. So I think
it's more like
it needs to happen one way or another somewhere.
I think I agree with you, but also I think there's some nuance to it. The CVE system itself is like, it's a exponentially bigger data set, right? So if you have, it's relatively easy to say the thing, XYZ has this vulnerability. The other thing is to say, of all of the things that use XYZ, these ones exhibit the vulnerability, these ones kind of, don't expose it. So that becomes, a much larger set of data to manage or deal with or query. And it's less about like it has to be at the right place and more that it has to be on the server. If there's no server-side support for this feature, it doesn't matter. Like the CLI can post the attestation. If it just goes into a black hole, it's no good. The other thing from a incentives point of view, I think GitHub, just as an organization, I mean, this is my own hot take on this, is I don't speak for my employer here, but it seems to me like GitHub's motivations or incentives are actually aligned with the community in this case. Like GitHub's not making any money by saying, getting more security advisories out there. We actually do better if the community can be more efficient, if we're kind of the tool that everybody wants to use. So yeah, I think the right thing is happening. But yeah, this has to be done on the server side, or there's not really much value. What I don't want to do is kind of wed the CLI to some particular data shape or implementation, and then have some third-party registry start leveraging that. But then the thing we end up actually using is something different, and now we kind of have to support two different shapes of that data to come in. We do that already with advisories, so it's not like the end of the world if that's what ends up happening. But until there's some kind of server implementation, it doesn't make a ton of sense to do on the CLI, and the part to be done on the CLI is pretty straightforward. So we could do that very rapidly once there is something on the server.
Right. So I guess this also begs the question that I know ZB has asked many times in terms of at the project level with his tooling and NPM Audit Resolver, that tool, having a local or project level file which does audit resolutions and is not something that you can essentially, like, you would not distribute and would not be able to sort of have as kind of I know Wes has talked about this in the past, a sort of ignore list type feature, but something that is sort of created and supported at the project level for individuals. Like, is that a potential solution as we wait for a registry implementation? Because it seems like we're blocked by that and just aren't providing any kind of mechanism today.
If we could make a local ignore list that was scoped, in other words, not just every minimist CVE ignore, or like every flavor, every CVE number 1, 2, 3 ignore. Like if it was more like ignore any of this CVE from this package via these dependencies.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it has to take into account the vulnerability path. So you're actually
correct.
What you're actually ignoring is kind of the meta vulnerability. Right. If you're using Minimus directly,
then you have that vulnerability potentially, and you need to know about it.
You need to know about it. Yeah. If you're using something that uses Minimist, you should be able to avoid that.
Right.
Or maybe even, we could say, look, either ignore this vulnerability when it's ignore CVE 1, 2, 3, ignore advisory 1, 2, 3 when it's a direct dependency, ignore it also if it's a dependency of foo. Now, if I have a dependency bar that has that, I still want to see it.
Right.
So yeah, you need that kind of granularity. And that's exactly why it's such an explosive data set, right? Because every path into the application is a different instance.
Right.
So that, yes, maybe, like that is preferable. Like, because again, I don't see us spinning up, and by us, I say I don't see registries today, like, or in 6 months to a year, and I could be wrong based on, I don't know everybody's backlogs and timelines, spinning up the ideal counterclaim mechanism for CVs today that I think we would all.
So the current state is, if I maintain like 3 ESLint plugins, and if there's a regular expression denial of service vulnerability somewhere in there, all of those are not problems in an ESLint plugin, like categorically. So I get a bunch of complaints right now, and I have to convince people it's not a big deal. But then like, I don't have any workaround for them. I have to, with Yarn, I can tell them to use overrides or, something, but like, there's nothing to do here. So the ignore list would at least let me just say, this is not a vulnerability, put this line in this place, and you're good. And then like the longer term solution would be, which is even better, is me putting that assertion in before those people have even seen the vulnerability in the first place. And then I don't have 78 issues opened up on my repo about it, but like, it's still a marginal improvement to have a workaround to provide them. So I am happy with that as an iterative step. It's definitely not enough, but it's way better than the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize, I'm just taking notes here. Did anybody else have any comments they want to make on this? I believe this is more in line with one of the older RCs that, again, Noctur or ZB had filed to introduce something like the NPM Audit Resolver schema that is supported right now by that tooling. So I'm wondering if we can make ignore lists or a brand new kind of RC that threads the needle of what we're speaking to here now, and maybe that original RC that you created, which I think had both it was proposing inheriting the tool as well as the schema, and maybe there's like a fresh perspective we can take with that RC. I'm going to take an action item here to propose a local file ignore. We call it an ignore list. /ignore/resolution. form meta. Okay, I feel like that's like a good step forward that actually provides some mechanism, and it's completely independent of any registry implementation, which is like ideal that we can try to like, you know, solve things here. So that I think wraps up in terms of what we had on the agenda. Was there anything else that folks want to bring up? If there's no other topics, we can give you all a half hour back and wrap up early today. Thanks for jumping on, and ideally we'll see you next week, and hopefully keep the conversation going in the RFCs themselves. Yeah, take care.
Fun.
Thanks.